In breaking news, the notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and this is going to start a huge political war. According to NPR, the Supreme Court announced her death, saying the cause was complications from metastatic cancer of the pancreas. So if you've been following the news recently about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you'd know that she'd been battling cancer for quite a while. As a matter of fact, she had been in and out of the hospital fairly frequently. So it's not necessarily a surprise that this happened, but that doesn't mean that it's a good thing either, because she was still a public figure who passed away. And as a conservative, I disagreed with her on most everything, but it's still not something that we should cheer. So please don't be doing that. Just recognize that she was a prominent figure who has passed away. Now, NPR continues talking about who she was and what she's best known for. And I just want to look at that very briefly. Architect of the legal fight for women's rights in the 1970s, Ginsburg subsequently served 27 years on the nation's highest court, becoming its most prominent member. And that is something that is undoubtedly true. Now, whether or not you agree with her now, you can't really argue that back in the 70s and 80s, she was pretty instrumental in helping bring about gender equality. And yes, I know there's going to be pushback on that, but I do really think that she was a pretty important figure back in the 70s. Now, I don't agree with her on much anything else today, especially when it comes to things like abortion, because she tends to be very, very radical, but I can still recognize that where she started was at least in a good place, in my opinion. This article continues. Her death will inevitably set in motion what promises to be a nasty and tumultuous political battle over who will succeed her, and it thrusts the Supreme Court vacancy into the spotlight of the presidential campaign. So now that she has passed away, there is a Supreme Court vacancy that President Trump is going to try and fill, which wouldn't really be a big deal because he is still the president. But because of what Mitch McConnell did back in 2016, it's going to become a huge deal. You see, during Obama's last year as president, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate refused to allow him to nominate a Supreme Court justice, even though a Supreme Court justice had died back in February. So Obama would have had essentially an entire year. But because of Mitch McConnell being a Republican and not liking Obama, he essentially refused to accept any of the nominees throughout the entire year. His reasoning was because it was an election year, and so he was going to let the people decide what type of judge we should nominate. Which, before we go any further, I hope you can recognize the error in his ways. Even if you're a Republican like I am, that was a mistake. He should not have done that. I can't believe they did it, and they actually went with it for an entire year. So you can probably see where this is going. Last year, however, Mitch McConnell decided that it didn't really matter what happened in the 2020 election, that they would still nominate someone. In his words, he said, we'd fill it if there were a Supreme Court justice vacancy. And this is going to drive Democrats crazy. Mitch McConnell has basically said that he's not going to abide by the rule that he set back in 2016 right now because it's a Republican who's in the presidency, which is completely hypocritical and a very bad move. And this is coming from a conservative. Yes, I want Trump to fill that seat because he's the president. It's his right. But considering the fact that Mitch McConnell essentially took that away from Obama, it is 100% obvious what's going to happen from here on out. The Democrats are not going to go along with it, and they're going to push back at every single step. One major difference now, however, is that the Democrats are not in control in the Senate, like Republicans were back in 2016. So I'm not actually sure if they're going to succeed in stopping it from happening. We may very well get another Supreme Court justice nominee from President Trump this year, but we'll have to see. On average, the Supreme Court nomination process takes about 25 days. But for Brett Kavanaugh, because of all the pushback we saw, it actually took a little bit longer. You see, he was nominated back in July, but wasn't confirmed and sworn in until October 8th, which is 3 months. 3 months from today, which is the middle of September, would take us to the middle of December, the end of the year. At that point, the election already would have happened, but that doesn't really matter because Trump would still be president until the end of the year. So even if he loses the election, by all rights, he could still nominate and confirm a Supreme Court justice. But the reason that may not happen, once again, is because of what the Republicans did back in 2016. I cannot emphasize this enough, and maybe you disagree with me, maybe you think it was warranted, but I don't. It was a mistake, and now we're obviously seeing that it's going to be used against us as well. To kind of sum everything up, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and that's going to start a huge political war. President Trump is undoubtedly going to try and nominate a Supreme Court justice, and the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi are not going to stand for it. The Republicans gave them the perfect ammo to use against them, and it's probably going to show in the election. If Republicans do push forward in spite of what happened in 2016, the Democrats are not going to let that down. There's going to be ad after ad talking about this and pointing out the vast hypocrisy going on here. And I don't think it's going to end well for Republicans. So personally, I'm not sure what the best move is here. As I've said many times, what Republicans did back in 2016 was a mistake. And now we're seeing why. If they go with the nomination process, they're going to be branded as liars and hypocrites. If they don't, then that just means if Joe Biden wins, he's going to get a Supreme Court nominee right away, which kind of sucks. Either way, it's not a very good situation. But what are your thoughts? Do you disagree with my assessment here? If you do, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. And try and keep it civil. I understand that most conservatives didn't like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm one of them. But she did just die, so try not to cheer. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.